Good morning, everyone. This lecture is on IT architecture and deployment models. When you think about information technology that are used in organizations today, the main purpose of these information technologies are really to manage and optimize business performance. Companies invest in IT in order to either reduce cost or they want to improve the quality of business processes, which means reduce the number of errors that you can commit while conducting a business process. They want to reduce the amount of time it takes to run a process. They don't want for them to replenish an order, for example, to take more than 2 days. So shortening the life cycle of a business process, as we said, reducing the cost by reducing the number of resources that's required or needed to fulfill a business process. And the third thing is they want also IT to support innovation. So what can IT do to an organization? IT can reduce the cost. IT can shorten the time it takes to finish a business process, can increase efficiency by reducing the number of errors and automating a lot of the steps in the business process. And IT can also support innovation. Okay, so what do we mean by an IT architecture or an IT infrastructure? These are the components that make up the IT. When we talk about an IT architecture, we're talking about the hardware, the software, the databases that we need in order to store information, the networks that are needed to connect the resources together. We talked about the fact that there are no longer standalone systems. So we have different systems talking to each other through a network. We also have people that are required or needed in order to input information into the system or generate reports out of the system or manage the network or manage the database. So people is still a very important component of the IT architecture. And the last thing is the processes. So there are really 6 components to an IT architecture: the hardware, the software, the database, the network, the people, and the processes that define how do you conduct a business process. So are these components, all 6 components, important? Do they really help an organization? Yes, of course. There is no way you would have an information technology without the hardware. You have to have computers, you have to have printers, you have to have scanners. All of these are very important. Now, the hardware by itself does not run. You cannot run by itself. You have to have software. The software is what runs the hardware, really. So if I want to print, I need to have a middleware or some kind of a software that communicates with the printer, that tells the printer how to print and when to go to a next page and what to write in the footer and so on. So the software is very important. We have different types of software. We have operating systems like Windows and the Mac OS and Linux. All of these are different operating systems. That's the basic type of software that a computer would need. On top of the operating system, you would need applications like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, SAP. All of these are applications that run on top of the operating system. And we also have utility software like a virus scan, a disk manager. These are like utility software. They help you perform certain utilities or improve the performance of your machine. So the hardware is very important because without it, you really don't have any information technology. The software manages the hardware and also has applications to perform business processes. The database is required because that's where you store your information and you can run analysis on the data. The networks are very important because nowadays you cannot do anything without the network. You have to connect to other machines, you have to connect to the database, you have to connect to a printer, you have to connect to servers that are across the globe. They may not be in the same country. So the network is very important because everything now is connected. You cannot have a standalone system. The last thing is, or the people, as we said, are still very important because they put information into the system in some cases, or they generate output. They make sense of the reports coming from the system. We are trying to make systems intelligent, but up until today, the decision is still within the realm of the individual. So that answers the questions, how are the different components of the architecture important? Now the last one, I forgot to say that the process is also important because without the process you cannot really understand what's going on with the system. If you don't, and that's why when we go with SAP, I first explain to you the process and then I let you use the system. It will be very hard for you to use a system for a business process that you do not understand as a person. So the steps that you need to take within the system are important. Otherwise, if you don't have these steps, you cannot operate the system. If I don't give you instructions for the lab on what to do on every screen, then you will not be able to complete that business process. Okay, so what are the different deployment models? And by deployment, we mean how can we access all of these resources that we talked about, the hardware, the software, the database, the networks, the people, and the processes. The simplest deployment model would be to just buy all of this, buy it and manage it in-house. But then that becomes really very expensive, and organizations have realized that IT is very expensive and may not generate value for the organization. They found out over the years, companies have realized a lot of problem with the IT infrastructure. One thing they found out is that the architecture is fragmented, meaning I have so many different systems within organizations, and these systems do not talk to each other. A perfect example is really at TSU. TSU bought a lot of systems over the years. I've been here for 10 years now. And last year, they started the study looking at these different systems and found out that there is a lot of replication, which means the different systems that they have bought can do similar things. So they have invested in too many systems that they really didn't need because one system could do what the other system can also perform. The second thing is that the systems do not talk to each other. So you don't have communication between degree first and banner. Now, one system check what your degree is, your degree plan, and try to find out what courses you need to uh, register for at a particular semester, what you should not register for because you don't have the prerequisites for. But the thing is, these two systems cannot directly talk to each other. Individuals, humans, have to take data from one system and migrate it into the other system. So that's what we mean by fragmented. Fragmented means that the systems are not integrated, they do not talk to each other. Companies have also found out that there is a very high maintenance cost, a lot of errors, a lot of problems with the system as you use them. And people invest a lot of time in order to figure out what's going on with these systems. The third thing is really related to the first, is that every now and then we have a new software, and companies or some people within companies, the employees are always very eager to get the latest and greatest. As a result, they tend to buy that new software that is not integrated with the already existing architecture. So the existing systems do not talk to that new software that you buy. And as a result, you end up with a fragmented architecture. Also, they found out that IT is not really reliable, meaning that a lot of times the system is down. A lot of time the network makes the system not accessible. So, and actually that happens in the commercial side and in sales and have resulted in a lot of loss for organizations. So what should be the solution then? Well, one thing I can think of is that you have to have a standard architecture, meaning that the systems need to be using the same information technology. So if I am a company where the majority of individuals and the majority of systems run on Windows, then everything that I should buy should also be able to run on Windows. I cannot like have some systems running on Windows and other running on Linux and other running on Unix. That will make it hard for me to maintain the architecture. I will have to invest in a lot of human resources, a lot of people who understand networks and understand operating systems in order to manage these different OS meaning operating system. So the first thing is that you really need to invest in a standard architecture. The second thing is that anything that you buy new should be aligned with the standard architecture. You should not go with the best of the breed. As long as the software that you currently have in the organization is working, then there is no need for you to go and buy something else. If it ain't broken, don't fix it, which means that you should not go with the latest and greatest. There should be a good reason for you to invest in a new technology. Remember, any new technology will cause disruption to the system or to the architecture. Now, another important question when I'm considering the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, and what deployment model I should go with is the IT philosophy. Should I set IT to be a cost center or a profit center? Let me explain to you what is a cost center and what's a profit center. If a department is set up as a cost center, that means it is an overhead, which means the company need to put money or to invest or pay for that department without expecting anything in terms of revenue. That department is just servicing or serving the rest of the organization, but they do not by themselves generate any revenue. So we can think of IT as a cost center that will support the rest of the organization. The IT will have a budget, and that budget will be used in order to support the different organizations in terms of the use of information technology. So anyone has a problem with IT, they call the IT help desk and they would dispatch someone to them or help them remotely, and that would be it. Now, a profit center on the other side would be responsible for generating revenues. The question may be then, well, IT does not sell by itself. It's not sales department. It's not like you don't use IT to sell, except like for Amazon and eBay and the online companies. But in general, um, other organizations, the brick and mortar, they don't um, use IT to sell. They use IT to perform business processes. They use IT in order to make decisions and so on. How can these companies set IT as a profit center then? Well, they can set IT as a profit center by making IT charge the different departments. So when a department needs the support of the IT help center, the IT help center will charge them a certain cost. Now, is that good for IT? For the IT department by itself? Of course not. The IT department would wish to go as a cost center because that way they have a budget, they can spend their budget any way they want. With a profit center, they get their budget from the different departments. So if the different departments don't see a value in the IT help desk, then they will say, okay, we'll go outside. We don't need that department, close it. We'll actually buy these services from outside. So it's very important. Nowadays, every company actually set IT as a profit center. There is no longer that cost center. So IT now must be very careful. They must generate value. They must help the organization achieve its strategic objectives, which means they have to reduce cost by increasing the operations, which means they can support more operations. So instead of selling 30 or fulfilling 30 orders per day, they can fulfill 100 using the IT. They reduce labor. I don't need as many people to do a business process as I used before because IT can automate the business process. They reduce errors. They improve the quality of the service because there are no errors, little human intervention, and they can also increase innovation, and we will see later on how is that. Okay, so how can I get that IT? Shall I buy everything? Shall I outsource everything? Can I rent? So the three deployment models really is you can buy or you can outsource, which means you get an external company to manage your IT, or you can rent, and that's the cloud. The key idea is that you shouldn't ever actually go with best of the breed. A lot of people think the latest is the greatest, and that's not really true. Whatever is working within your organization, don't change it. If it's working, if it's generating value, if it's not having any problems, then don't change it. And a lot of companies have still systems from the 70s. Why? Because they're running fine. The second thing, so you shouldn't go with best of the breed. If it's working, then don't. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. And then the second thing is go with a standard infrastructure. Have everything run on the same technology. Because when you go with different technologies, then that's raises the cost of maintenance. So I'll go with the standard. I don't have to go with best of the breed. My main concern is cost. Is if you go with the standard, you are reducing cost. If you go with the standard, you are also increasing integration. Systems can talk to each other. Why? Because they are running on the same infrastructure or the same technology. Companies now do not buy, they don't build, by the way. Build is the last one, meaning you build the system by yourself. Systems are getting very complex, they are very big, it takes a lot of time. Majority of companies will not invest the resources needed to build a new system. They rather buy or outsource or rent. With buying, you still have to maintain systems, so you still have to hire people to maintain the system. Because once you buy it, the vendor doesn't support it anymore. Or you can say, I'm not going to buy it, I'm going to outsource. I'm going to get a company to provide the service for me, and I will pay that company. In that case, the outsourcing company, you don't pay just the cost of the software, but you pay the cost of the software plus consulting. Or you can go with the cloud, and with the cloud, you are actually renting resources. You can rent hardware only. You can rent the hardware and the software. And you can specify, I don't need all of the software, I just need the operating system and the networking. Or you can say, I want the operating system and some tools that I will use to play with. Or you can say, I actually don't want to manage anything. I want to rent everything. And in that case, you are renting the hardware, you are renting the software, and you're also renting the application at the top. Whatever model you should go, you should consider two things, reliability and security. Is that model reliable, which means that the service will be 24/7 provided? There are no errors, there are no problem in accessing that model. The second thing is security. You have to understand that there are certain um, industries that are not allowed really to put their data on the cloud, like healthcare and banking. These are like the two very notorious industries that are not allowed to put data on the cloud because of the possibility of like fraud or privacy issues and so on. The last problem or the last thing that you need to consider when deciding, shall I rent, shall I buy, shall I outsource, is control. How much control will I have if I rent? Now with renting, you don't own the hardware, you don't own the software, you don't own the application. Everything is managed by a company outside, and you pay them a fee. Will you have control over your data, over your business processes? So to get IT right, you need to make sure that any new technology that you buy is aligned to the corporate strategy. You have to build a horizontally oriented architecture, which means an architecture that can integrate, can talk to each other, that you have a uniform standard architecture so that systems that you put on top can talk to each other. And you have to run the IT organization as a profit center so that it generates value. Despite everything that we have talked about, there are lots of challenging problems with IT. One that is really becoming very annoying is identity theft because of the use of the network, because a lot of the private data is being transmitted over the network. You have identity theft. We also have seen a lot of the cyber terrorism um, and a lot of misinformation. Information that is posted on the web are not accurate. Some of the challenges, because information technology is taking great strides and providing a lot of resources at your fingertip, we have a lot of problems, especially with health and obesity. We have erosion of the social life. People no longer talk to each other. You don't spend time with your neighbor. Everything you're doing is texting and chatting and playing on the internet, these games, the social games, and so on. We are going to see in the next future sensors that are attached to everything. So you have continuous monitoring of every step that you take and everything that you say. Now, there are lots of concerns about digital divide, and that's the gap between the poor and the rich will continue to increase because the rich can get resources um, through the internet, through information technology, while the poor do not have access to these. And as a result, now that gap between the poor and the rich will actually start widening more and more. You have people who are very versed in technology, and this is really very apparent in the internet uh, arena. Now, if you look at online courses that are offered free by universities that are very popular, like Harvard and Stanford and so on, you see that more than 20,000 people register for these courses. However, only 1% of the people that register actually get degrees from the courses. Coursera is one resource that's available. You can go and visit Coursera and you can see. The problem is those who pass, the 1% that pass the courses, that actually take the courses, are people that are already versed in technology. They are already in very good jobs and so on. Unfortunately, the internet and the IT is not helping the people who need the help, and that's another concern of, of IT. With that, I will end that presentation or that lecture. You need to listen really carefully to it along with the group presentation on the same topic before you take the quiz. Thank you all for listening.